Good evening. Welcome. I'm Amy Endres. I'm the Public Programs Manager here. And on behalf of all of us at the Driehaus Museum, I want to thank you for your enthusiasm for tonight's special program with Kevin Coval. He certainly draws a crowd. It's standing room only. It's completely sold out, so we're very, very excited. Before we begin, I do have a couple of announcements. On Saturday, February 10th, we open our dynamic new exhibition, The Art of Seating, 200 Years of American Design, which features 37 significant examples of American chairs from 1810 to 2010. Designed for form and function, each of these works of art acts as a window into our national history, culture, and social trends. This survey of exceptional chairs chair design stresses the formation of an American aesthetic and showcases this country's creativity and ingenuity in decorative design. This evening, we also kick off our 2018 programming season, packed with unique opportunities to learn more about the museum, the Gilded Age, and our special exhibition, of course. Jazz and blues concerts, lectures, family days, and special events like our upcoming Valentine's Day Cabaret. All of these things offer a variety of engaging, informative, and fun experiences, and there's something for everyone. Please visit our newly designed website at driehausmuseum.org for more information. Now, for tonight's presentation. Actually, this is our second collaboration. In 2017, we hosted a workshop together with Looking Glass Theater, of course, led by Kevin Coval and company, the Looking Glass Theater Youth Ensemble, and Skyline Village, which was called Exchange Between the Invisible. And Kevin will tell us a little bit more about it. So as most of you know, Kevin Coval is a poet and a community builder. As the artistic director of Young Chicago Authors, founder of Louder Than a Bomb, the Chicago Youth Poetry Festival, and professor at the University of Illinois Chicago, where he teaches hip-hop aesthetics, he mentored thousands of young writers, artists, and musicians. He is the author and editor of 10 books, including The Breakbeat Poets, New American Poetry in the Age of Hip Hop, and his work has appeared in many, many national publications and media. Coval's recent collection, A People's History of Chicago, was released in 2017 by Haymarket Books. Following that launch, Kevin and Young Chicago Authors, guest artists like we have here tonight, embarked on a year-long journey leading more than 180 sessions in libraries, high schools, museums, community centers, dive bars, and places of worship in each of Chicago's 77 neighborhoods. We are thus proud and honored to host Kevin Coval here at the Driehaus Museum to support his work and engage with him and the Chicago community in this important dialogue about our past, our present, and our future. Please help me in welcoming Kevin Coval.
All right, thank you for being here. And thank you to Amy, and thank you to Rena and the whole staff of the Driehaus Museum. This is a beautiful space, right? Yeah, I know. I'm like, what am I doing here? You know what I mean? Yeah, this is not our first time being here, which I am also surprised by. But we had a meeting, I don't know, maybe like 6 months or less ago, and they were like, yeah, you know, what do you want to do here? I'm like, well, I just met this crew of incredibly talented older writers, and we're talking to Looking Glass Theater about this collaborative project with their younger writers, and they're like, well, you know, if you want to do it here, we can host a workshop here. And so we were in the basement, and we're together for a few hours, and we took what we did that evening and then brought it to the Looking Glass Theater stage just a few months ago. I'm horrible. At this point, I'm very bad with time, so I don't know if it was a few months ago or yesterday or like 8 years ago, but it was recently in my mind. And so, right, Regan, it wasn't that long ago, right? It was in December. Right, so that's like, I know. Well, when Amy said 2017, I'm like, oh my God, that's so long ago. You know what I mean? But so I really like this space, and I'm excited about what will come of it. I also love chairs. I don't know if you guys have seen the chair exhibition, but like, look, those chairs are very fresh. Do you know what I mean? So I'm excited about all of what's going on here. Y'all, this is the woman behind me is the illest DJ in the city of Chicago. Her name is DJ Cashier. Make some noise for your DJ one time. Cashier is the official DJ at Louder Than a Bomb, the Chicago Youth Poetry Festival, which is, of course, an event that we run here in Chicago. And I'll talk more about that because we're on the eve of the beginning of this 18th year of the festival. And of course, we do a lot of work in the city, around the city, and a lot of it stems from the vibrancy of hip-hop cultural practice, which I don't know how much rapping has been done at the Treehouse Museum. Can we verify that? Amy, is that going on often? Is that a lot of that? So tonight, I asked some of the young homies who I am a real fan of to come and kick us off proper. I'll say this, that in Chicago, it was the cultural spaces that allowed me to peer into the opportunity to create a different kind of city. And if it wasn't for house music, which I'll talk a little about later, and if it wasn't for hip hop, that I wouldn't have a vision of a cultural space and a public community that was, as my friend Boogie McLaren says, radically inclusive. If we're going to imagine a city that is equitable, that is just for all people, we have to begin to interact that way. And so the cultural space of hip hop for me was some of the first spaces and some of the only spaces where I saw there to be equity and where I also saw there to be every kind of person in the world be able to participate in one way or another in the cipher. And so, I'm a product of Chicago hip hop space, and I'm also now, because I'm old, one of the folk who are also responsible for fostering it and maintaining it, and everything that I got from it I have to give back times 10. And so this crew that I'm about to introduce you to, these young men, I've known for a few years. They have come up in and around spaces like Young Chicago Authors and Louder Than a Bomb, also products of a number of other incredible youth writing and artistic communities. They met when they were in high school and formed a crew called Huey Gang, which has a beautiful acronym that I'll let them break down for you. But their song that they're about to perform for you is a debut. And it is debuting as well for the first time for the public to consume on the Louder Than a Bomb mixtape. And so they are going to go from here and into our space. They're going to be at the Metro February 10th for our 9th annual Winter Hip Hop Block Party that we do every year with WBEZ and Vocalo and Chicago Public Radio. That's a free event that's all day long for all ages. And so during the day, there's a B-boy battle, there's a street and graffiti art gallery, there's face painting, there's a barbershop, there's dance classes, there's DJ Cashera, and then in the evening, facts, right? You're playing, right? And then in the evening, we have a concert that's headlined by our homie Rick Wilson and The Mind and Tasha, who are all beautiful musicians. We're also doing a Secret Wall street art battle, and in the street art battle, we're gonna hear some of the songs off the mixtape. So you're about to hear this now for the first time, and then hopefully be able to download the mixtape for all those who are like big advocates of the downloadable mixtape. Yeah, I'm excited, man. So, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to the Huey Gang, Law and Stark. Please make some noise for these guys.
How's everybody doing this evening?
Yeah. All right, cool. I like that. So we are the fine young gentlemen of Huey Gang. Huey stands for Headstrong Urban Educated Youth. We started this back in 2009 with just us two at a technology class where we had to come up with a music video. And we was like, okay, we the only two rappers in here, so let's make a music video. And that turned into a brotherhood that has definitely expanded. So 2009 going strong to infinity, you feel me?
When we started, though, at that point, we were known as True Lyrics, which kind of didn't really have any meaning outside of just us doing music, being lyricists. But it blossomed into Huey Gang in about 2012. And the intent behind that acronym is to provide, not only provide, but also personify a counter-narrative that all too commonly suggests that young urban men are nothing but hoodlums or nothing but, people who have a hard time contributing to society or contributing to each other. So we wanted to provide a counter-narrative that, we're about something different. We're about uplifting. We're about bringing each other up and just trying to create a positive image, not only for young black boys like us, but just black boys all around the world, man, in Chicago and abroad. So that's what that acronym is about.
All right.
So, with that being said, this song is another counter-narrative, man, because a lot of what's been coming out in the media about Chicago for the past, I want to say, a solid decade has just been Chicago is a war zone, Chicago is this, Chicago is that. We even had Spike Lee, phenomenal film director, but in my opinion, in poor judgment, directed a film called Chirac, which is a terribly inaccurate depiction of who we are in this city on a real level. So this song was pretty much a direct combat of that film, of the whole idea and the notion of Chirac. It was about us having appreciation for this city that we grew up in, the city that gave us so much and that we can't wait to give back to. So
Yeah, all
if
that.
y'all are ready for it, if y'all are ready for it, we can get into this record.
Hey, make some noise if you're from Chicago. And this goes out to you and you and you. Yeah, we ready. Come on. Sorry. Yeah. Now, however you vibe to music, you can do that. So I see somebody with and don't worry about being on beat or nothing like that. Look. Tell them you ain't gotta ask no questions, cause you know that we come from the goal. In a concrete jungle where the streets never sleep, I was raised in the goal. Hey, no matter where I'm at on the map, man, I still got love for the goal. Now it's time to take my city back, everybody stand up for the goal. Hey, say we come from the goal. Yeah, 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 we come from the goal. You know 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 we come from the goal. Hey, and on the count of three, everybody throw up your seas and say we come from the goal. Heads down, eyes closed, come and pray with me. We took a hate city and made it a great city. As much as it rained, it ain't hard to stay drippy. Minimum wage went to 10 from $8.50. But sometimes the wind make my city cold. Like high as April and I'm still wearing winter clothes. But anyway, we all shine like we dipped in gold. And all the women here battling the 6-year-olds. Not need pigeon toes, bad face in the fold. Either way, she hotter than the Uncle Remus funeral. My dead homies went to the school of hard knocks. So they ain't dead, it's just the principal sent them home. And I'ma see them again with school over. Might have never been to the city, but you know us. And we ain't never shy, that's only a name. And when Obama ball changed, we started a new culture. I got angels surrounding me. Make my mama so proud of me. The flow too sins like the tower. Then we drop tapes and they sound like albums. Trying to find peace, so I hide in the park where a rock from. The chance got us all feeling like we got one. It ain't always pretty in my city, but she make up for it when the weather hit the 50s. Popping like Diddy on the D-Lo. Trying to spread peace to my folks and my people. Mouse on some chicken in the basement, you party. GCI playing your favorite new artist. Whoa. They love saying that it's no love here. That's a lie, cause I thought I was finna grow up here. And I bet you be a full fan just like me. It's Chicago. Bro, we don't trust Spike Lee. Gotta ask no questions, cause you know that we come from the goal. Yeah, we come from the goal. It's a concrete jungle where the streets never sleep. I was raised in the goal. Yeah, I was raised in the goal. No matter where I'm at on the map, man, I still got love for the goal. Got love for the goal. Now it's time to take our city back. Everybody stand up for the goal. Stand up for the goal. Say we come from the goal. You know we come from the goal. Say we come from the goal. You know we come from the goal. Say we come from the goal. Hold on. I want them to say a little. Say we come from the goal. Say we come from the Chirac, we say bump that, put them guns down, bring that love back. They say Chirac, we say bump that, put them guns down, bring that love back. They say Chirac, we say bump that, put them guns down, bring that love back. We come from the goal. That was the longest applause we ever got right there. Wow, man, yo, thank you all for letting us share our gift with you all about how great this city is. You know, shout out to the Bulls, the Blackhawks, every Chicago team, Cubs, White Sox, you know, shout out to Giordano's, shout out to every staple of Chicago, that's what we represent. You can follow us anywhere at Huey_Gang. That is Huey_Gang. Be on the lookout for us. We do a lot of things from mentoring youth to hosting different events and all types of stuff, man. We're great guys. Thank you again.
Yeah. One more time, y'all. Yeah, noise for Huey Gang. Song's great, right? Yeah. Right. So I just want to say, so they're 23 years old, right? And they're like at the pinnacle of the turn, you know, from the life of like running around and the constant grind into professional artistry. And so, you know, it takes a lot. It takes a local fan base. And so for real, like, follow, support, go out to the stuff they do. These dudes are very hard-working artists. They, you know, play in the community on a regular basis. The regulars at YCA, they've been an incredibly important part of the work that we do. And so please support what they do, their vision. If you have a space where you're like, yo, I need some rappers, like, come through, you know what I'm saying? Like, make sure you have the bag correct. But I mean, you know, like, make sure that you support what it is that they are doing, okay? Cool, y'all good? Good. All right. I really like what both of them said, and Stark, I appreciate what you said in terms of counter narrative. A lot of the reason why I write, and a lot of the reason why I wrote this book, and a lot of the reason why I picked up a pen to begin with, has everything to do with countering the narrative that this country continues to tell, and the various lies that we continue to spread about one another, about some of our neighbors, about some of our, you know, brethren in this city and around the planet. Of course, as a young person, you know, we're given a lot via our education system, and I always felt like there was something about some of the stories that I got that I didn't trust, you know? And hip hop really sent me into a trajectory of self-education that made me try to seek out a different narrative. Hip hop sent me to the library when I was a young person to read, because the MCs, the rappers, the poets that I loved where they were saying names in their songs that I didn't know who they were talking about. You know, I was born in Newtown. I was born in Michael Reese, right? And then I lived in Newtown, which is now called East Lakeview. I lived on Roscoe for a while. We moved to Aldine. I went to Jewish day school at Auntie Emmett at Pine Grove and Grace. And then, you know, lived with my aunt Joyce Sloan lived at 3800 Lakeshore Drive. I lived with her for a while. We moved to the suburbs and I came back to the city, you know, kind of firmly and finally like in 95, 96. But being a young person in and around that time, you know, I was getting a lot of various narratives. And so when Chuck D or Run DMC said, you know, we read about Malcolm X in the history text, Jesse Owens broke records, Ali broke necks, I was like, I do not read about Malcolm X in the history text. What history text are you getting? You know? And so I had to go to the library, and thank God the library was open and free. Like, they made a mistake with that, you know what I mean? Like, because you could just go in and read, and nobody says anything. In fact, they're helpful. The librarians are mad helpful at the library. You know what I mean? They'll be like, oh, you're looking for Malcolm X? Sure, it's right over here, young man. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, really? Because then once you get into the book, you're like, oh, dang, they want me reading this? And next to the autobiography of Malcolm X was Lerone Bennett Jr.'s Before the Mayflower, A History of Black America. And next to Lerone Bennett Jr. was Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. And of course, that book, those two books armed me in my history class junior year of high school. There's a mandatory American history class, I think, still in the state of Illinois. And so I had to take U.S. history. So you guys know, our theme this year, Louder Than a Bomb, is do the right thing, but W-R-I-T-E, because we like puns, and we're also trying to, kind of bake Spike Lee. We invited him to the festival this year. We'll see if he comes. I'm talking to his lawyer. So we'll see. But from that film, if you know that film, we're kind of celebrating some of the things, because he is a great filmmaker. And that film that he made about the city was also trash because he's not from here, But in that film, if you remember, there's a character bugging out who goes into Sal's pizzeria, and he's like, hey, Sal, how come, there's only white Italian Americans on the wall? And that was me, my junior year American history class, but at Glenbrook North High School in Northbrook, Illinois. Right, so I'm a white Jewish suburban kid, front row, first period, US history class, my hand's up before the teacher comes in. And he walks in, he's like, yeah? I'm like, Mr. Rosshold, violently dead white dudes on the wall. He's like, Mr. Coval, there was the dean's office. Do you know what I mean? And so that engagement with counter-narrative was really important to my development. And I think now, when we are up against such a grand system of misinformation, that we need to also tell the real. And so this book, in part, is a project that seeks to do that, not only for our city, but for working people around the planet. And so tonight, I want to begin with one of the first poems in the book, in part because of what 45 recently said about, immigrants who come to this country like everybody else did, except the indigenous that we stole the land from and then rounded them into concentration camps. So this is about one of the first settlers of the land, who we don't yet honor to the same degree we do most white men who took over his land because they were wealthy white men. And so this poem is called The Father is a Black Man, 1779. The father is mixed. The father is black. His mother a slave. His father a French mariner. The first non-native to settle in Chicago, Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, was a hustler. He worked the trap, traded pelts at the frontier, married Kitawatha, a Potawatomi woman he saw sailing the Mississippi, the traditional ceremony officiated by a chief. The father was cool with the indigenous. They settled at the mouth of the river where the Tribune sits, spewing untruths in English. DuSable spoke Spanish, French, English, and several native dialects. The father was a genius. He made okra and oxtail, a black bean stew, a pumpkin sauce harvested from the acres he farmed. His house had a large stone fireplace, a piano, a garden, an orchard. He collected paintings, mirrors, and walnut furniture. The father had style and maybe some gaiters. He finessed pesos, pounds, and francs from folks traveling through town, down the river, out west or back east. He stayed serving, awash in wampums. The father was ballin'. His granddaughter, the first non-native born in Chicago, was mixed. The first child born in Chicago was mixed. The father, a product of terror and rape. The father the city forgets is mixed. The mix made the British nervous, a body Protestants couldn't wrap their heads around. The father is a black man pushed out by a white man, rich and thirsty. DuSable left to die far from the city he built with his hands, his mixed hands, his black hands. The truth is, the father is a black man. Thanks. Cool. You could turn your phone off if you want. It's fair. It's fair. What happened?
Just one more bit.
One more pic? Oh, yeah, you're good. Oh, what happened?
And then I'll turn my phone.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Okay, cool. All right. So, I think that one of the other reasons why I wrote the book, and there are a lot of them, and I'll talk about some of them through the evening, is that we don't honor our own enough in this city. In some ways, we ourselves partake of the mythology of a second city syndrome. We have let some of our best and brightest go to the industry of the coast, the cultural industry of the coast, right? So we've lost some of our most impressive, brilliant cultural makers to, the film industry in LA or the music industry in New York. And I think that that's a problem because we need the creatives in part to reimagine what the future of this city might look like, right? And that's upon all of us, right? If we love and if we're proud of the city, then we also have to take it back. We have to take ownership of its future. We have to take ownership of the current moment. We can't wait generations for it to revive itself, for it to change, for there to be equity and, in the lives of their children's children, right? We need parity, equity, and just human rights and justice in this moment. And so I wanted to also put on for some of the folks that we know and some of the folks we don't know, but one of the women that I looked towards, and she was not perfect, of course, and who amongst us is Jane Addams. Because when I think about a white woman who was actually for real about the work, who dedicated her life, who invested her life into the work, we don't have to look far. I think one of the great tragedies of the way that story has been told, of course, is that Jane Addams is a queer woman. She lived with her partner at the Hull House. And yet we kind of skirt over this history because at UIC we're scared to say that somebody was queer. That's wild, And so part of the reason why I wrote the poem was to not only honor her, but also honor her partner and that legacy, and also to say that there are some very important ways to be not allies as white people, but as my friend Mahogany Brown might say, accomplices. That if we're not invested in the same fight for justice, then it will never change. And we need white people to be invested because it matters to us too. And we can no longer let the terror of white supremacy wreak havoc in this moment. I think Jane Addams in part was about that deconstruction. How to be down. September 18th, 1889 was when the Settlement House in Chicago opened. Jane Addams from rural Cedarville originated in loot and leisure. Got shook, the world wasn't like that for all, so she built a table, a house not perfect, but bout it. Her living room big enough for the whole West Side, needing culture as bread and spaghetti eventually, and kindergarten too, and garbage pickup, and public parks, and a place for immigrants, and a place for Benny Goodman to swing, and Upton Sinclair to report, and W.E.B. Du Bois to prophesy, a place for Ida B. Wells to debate and educate, Ellen Gates Starr, Florence Kelly, Alice Hamilton, this squad of white women, led by a squat, queer white woman. How odd indeed, how down she be. Cool. Thank y'all. So some of it, some of the book was very much research-based, written over the course of a couple years, and I got very invested as I've been, I'm a nerd, so I like history and I like digging in the crates, and I think hip-hop taught me to dig in the crates because if I didn't know, who was listed on the liner note of a record when they still made liner notes for records, I would go to the library, I'd be like, oh, it says here that Q-Tip sampled from Lee Morgan. Do you know who Lee Morgan is? And the great librarian would be like, no, but Dewey does. And so we checked it out, and so I got hip to jazz and blues because of hip hop and other musics because of hip hop. And so this book in some ways was the same. It was that process of digging and going through the crates of history. And so, I'd heard of Thomas Dorsey before, but I wasn't exactly sure all of what he did. And of course, so much was invented and made and innovated in Chicago. And, I'm a Chicago centrist, like probably a lot of y'all. So I think we stayed doing the illest and most important and beautiful things on planet Earth. I feel like we always claim everything here. You know what I mean? Or we should, because we also kind of do everything here. But at this point, I'm like, yeah, we made water. What? You know what I We reversed it though, right? And that's in the book. That's in the book. But Thomas Dorsey, really like gospel music, modern gospel music, here. Thomas Dorsey, gospel's daddy, 1932. Before the unspeakable, he was Georgia Tom on the road with Ma Rainey, a raunchy hit maker. 7 million records sold. Then his wife, Nettie, died in labor. His son 2 days later. Grief is an unshakable shelter. Like Coltrane composing Love Supreme in his daughter's afterglow, Dorsey took to song to mourn, channeled the spirit of rhythm and blues in juke and segregated joints. He harnessed the secular for the sanctified. Take my hand, precious Lord, the Genesis Gospels called Dorsey's praise with piano and tambourine, returning black Jesus to the choir, to the ladies of the church to raise and transform him, white and stiff on the cross as he was, into a movement Dr. King messed with. No one wanted to publish the songs he sang, so he made his own label, House of Music. Independent, divine, self-determined, trying to run the devil out, white, blue-eyed, or otherwise. Cool. Thanks. So I want to read that reversing water poem, which is in here now. There's a lot of poems. One of the other reasons why I want to write the book is because I wanted to tribute working people. Working people have won in this city, right? Many of the things we kind of now maybe take for granted have been developed because working people have lost their lives and put their bodies on the line in this city for an 8-hour day. People have, gone on hunger strikes to open up schools in Little Village. People have resisted the incursion of police, of corporations, of banks, of the mayors, in order to make sure that there is a more robust and equitable future for us all. And so I want to also acknowledge some of their work and labor and know that we've also won. And we've won when we've come together. Reversing the flow of the Chicago River, January 2nd, 1900. There's shit in the water. To avoid typhoid fever, an engineering miracle, on par with the pyramids. Canal and quarry men lost their lives and didn't get credit or fair compensation. Before it's over, Governor Altgeld calls the National Guard to kill some on strike. But today, Chicago does the impossible, reverses the flow away from the Great Lake, Michigan, toward the Des Plaines River in Lockport. This very moment, a man-made Nile, a diversion of millions of gallons by crane and crook-neck backs breaking rock, millennia of earth blown with dynamite. The grit of workers carved a path, bent the south branch and main stem, dug 28 miles of canal in the long purple dusk of a new century. The sweat and calloused hands of 8,500 men did the impossible, shifted the norm for the health of the young metropolis, immigrant men, a force to counter the natural systems so the city could survive. Thanks. Cool. So there are like a lot of happy poems in the book too, and I'm gonna read one because it is there isn't. I tried a little bit to weave my own narrative into the city because my people have also been here for a little while. My great-grandmother died in the Eastland. There's a poem about that in the book. My grandfather, George Coval, came from the Ukraine and moved to what became the Ukrainian village in 1906, fled the Cossacks who were coming, they were tailors in the Ukraine. And the governor or something like that, or whatever, petite, bourgeois governor was getting the fits from my family over there. He's like, look, I don't think I could keep y'all safe anymore. You might want to bounce. I don't think he said it in that very way. I don't think it's not verbatim, but Is that the Ukrainian translation? Okay, awesome, thank you, awesome, good. Wait, what's bounce in Polish? Okay, I'm putting you on the spot. All right, my bad. Okay, all right, cool. All right. And so I have a long history here, and wanted to also put some of that in the book. And I think it's significant that the Huey Gang is the next in a moment of Chicago music that over the last, at least 8 years has really been developing a force behind it. We've been seeing the import and the ramifications of the sonic experimentations that young people in the city have been making across not only the city but around the country and around the world. And the vibrancy of that is from many spaces, right? We have so many shoulders to thank and to acknowledge. And before this generation of Chicago music, there was a crew of mostly Latino men who were making incredible music called The Moment. And they released their tape. A lot of them worked at Gramophone Records, which is still there. If you guys know Gramophone Records on Clark, it used to be south of Diversey, now it's north of Diversey. It used to be the spot where like most of the house DJs would go to get their vinyl. And then as hip hop started to integrate itself into the cultural landscape of Chicago, all of it exporting from New York, there was an emerging hip hop crew and community that wanted to hear that music. And so The Moment started to make break beats or hip hop based beats. And they released cassette tapes. And most of y'all are, like me, old enough to remember a cassette tape. Fellas, I don't know if you guys know what cassette tapes are. And we used to clamor for them. They were all instrumental tapes, and it was a way that I found my community was through these tapes. It's called Moment beat tapes. Moment beat tapes were copped from Gramophone. Cassettes jammed into a factory-issued stereo deck of the hoopty I rolled around in. A bucket, bass and drum looped with some string sample fixed. A sliver of perfect adjusted. There was so much space to fill. An invitation to utter. Iqra, Allah said to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. A to B-side and around again, a circle, a cipher. I drive down and back in my mom's Dodge for these latest volumes of sound. I'd stutter and stop and begin again lonesome and on fire. No one I knew rapped. So I'd recite alone to myself on Clark Street, freestyling, shaping my voice a sapling, hatchling, rapping, my life emerging in the dark of an empty car. There was a time when hip hop felt like a secret society of wizards and wordsmiths, magicians meant to find you or that you were meant to find, like rappers I listened to and memorized in history class talk specifically to me, for me. And sometimes you'd see a kid whisper to himself in the corner of a bus seat, and you asked if he rhymed and traded a verse like a fur pelt, trapping this gold or food, this sustenance. You didn't have to ride solo anymore. Jonathan was the first kid I met who rapped. He was black, from a prep school, wore ski goggles on top his head, and listened to the Wu-Tang Clan, which meant he really only rhymed about science and chess. His pops made him read Sun Tzu. His man's Omega, a big Puerto Rican kid, wrote graffiti and smoked beaties. And they had friends, and the backseat would swell, and the word got passed, scooped like a ball on the playground. Sometimes you take what you were given and lift off like a trampoline, rocket launch, and sometimes you trip, not quick, words stuck on loop, like that, but breakthrough, mine knife sharp, mine darts polished and gleaming. We'd ride for the sake of rhyming, took the long way home, or wherever we were going. We'd cruise down Lakeshore, back again, blasting, blazing, polishing these gems, just trying to get our mind right? Thanks. Thanks. So I'm going to read 2 more poems, and I think what happened is that I was maybe I'll read 3 poems. I just thought of a third I might want to read. Everyone good? Yeah. Okay. So, I'm a Jew, and so, I get very like, neurotic, you know what I mean? You know that. And so it's funny to always like, talk to an audience and have people look at you and you're like, I can't tell what you're saying. Do you know what I mean? And then it's like, well, do you just feel like you gotta also like say, like, sure, do whatever you want, my guy, it's your show. Do you know what I mean? And then now we're in my head and then it's an awkward relationship. So this poem, I wrote because the book I'm writing right now is about Wicker Park in the 90s. And that's why I came back to. I was playing, in a lot of ways, my whole life has revolved around 1750 West Haddon, which is where my grandfather came. And Young Chicago Authors is only a few blocks from that space at 1180 North Milwaukee. And so almost daily, I'm walking in the footsteps of these ghosts, And I moved back from Wicker Park in 95, 96. I was playing semi-pro basketball overseas in Wales, which does not say much about my basketball ability. It does say a lot more about the condition of basketball in Wales at that time. I'm nice though, fellas. I mean, let's I don't know if, all right, but I moved back and started to run around and participate in an emerging spoken word hip hop scene, and that's what led me to the classroom, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But as I'm writing this book about Wicker Park and gentrification and the removal of working people and how neighborhoods shift and change and alter, I started to dig into the historical record to see how do we get to such a space. And that's what led to this book. So in some ways, the book I'm writing now was like meant to come before this book, but then there were just all these historical poems. And so, the Chicago 21 plan is kind of like the Illuminati, but in Chicago, right? It's like people have heard about it, they know about it. Sometimes it's called the Chicago plan or the Area 21 plan or the Chicago Area 21 plan or whatever. But it was this conglomerate of very wealthy white men who made the city what it is now, for better and worse. And I wonder about our collective ability to then unleash that same kind of radical imagining into the urban space in order to reimagine what it could be for us all and not just us some. And so this is a poem kind of about that moment in some ways. Arthur Roubloff was a part of that clique. He was a real estate developer who, of course, has buildings and a lot of things named after him. And he did say this in the Chicago Daily News. And so when we think about revising historical narratives and maybe beginning to take down some of the statues and names of places and removing mascots who history has proven that they are problematic, I wonder. Arthur Roubloff said, "I'll tell you what's wrong with the Loop. It's one word, BLACK." The Chicago 21 plan, September 1973. Oak and chandelier, opaque light filtering through the day's death, an ashtray near each fat white hand, the original canopy of cigar smoke, what is meant by backroom dealing, a plan to centralize in the Loop, to build a moat, a fortress, a gold coast, gold mine, take dead tracks, build condos, river norths, south loops, stave off white flight, usher white folk into condos, into Printers Row, choke Cabrini of its green. Pay to play, pay to stay, everyone was in on the act. The universities and big businesses too hold the center. Transform blues to white, collar, daily to daily, black to white, flight, fight from the past, erasure by another name. Gentrification's birth certificate. Thanks. Cool. 2 more poems. Of course, we are right at the beginning of our biggest season at Young Chicago Authors. How many of you have been to Louder Than a Bomb? Okay, that's not many of you. So look, this is the formal invite, y'all. That's why we're meeting today. Louder Than a Bomb is about to celebrate its 18th year and season. It is the world's largest youth poetry gathering on the planet. It brings together every zip code, every kind of student from all over the Chicagoland area. This year we'll have over 100 teams of poets who are competing. So it's like the Illinois State basketball tournament meets 8 Mile or like a rap battle, but fresher and more inspiring and very beautiful. And so we start February 10th at the block party and we go till March 18th. Down the street, we'll have the team finals on March 18th on a Sunday night at the Auditorium Theater. We'll fill 3,800 seats to support the stories of young people from all over the city. So please come. Our premise in the work is very simple, that regardless of who you are and regardless of where you come from, all of us have an essential story to tell. And if we don't do the work of telling our own stories, then as we've seen historically, we will indeed be lied about. And so we believe in creating larger and larger public platforms for young people from every walk of life to say what it is they care about, what they hope for, what they fear, and what they dream of. And so it's rooted in a pedagogical shift in the classroom. I myself never knew I was going to be a teacher. You know, I was a horrible student myself. And so that's the irony a little bit. But this is a poem about that work and about our central idea. This is called How to Teach Poetry in Chicago Public Schools. Look clean, fresh kicks, cut jeans. I mean, iron them shits. 'Cause even in uniform, the baddest students swagger on 100. And those are the kids you hope to build with. The ones who got a crate of albums on heart. They listen to Wheezy and Gucci and Waka Flocka, and some may even spit their own bars for days, alone in their room, or to their girl, or their little brother. And they might be reluctant to share, especially with the teacher, especially with the white boy. So start with the rhyme, something quick, a half note behind, West Side double time, their ears picked, able to roll with all those syllables. Now read a poem, something slow, familiar, an offering to Gwendolyn Brooks and Carl Sandburg sitting on your shoulder. Ask where their favorite rapper is from. Jay is from Marcy, and Ye is the South Side, and everybody know Wayne, Katrina, Soldier Boy. From 97 to 03, have a firm, well-reasoned opinion on who is better, Pac or Big. After that, Young Money, New Language, Kanye couplets on memory, photocopy Willie Perdomo's Where I'm From the Wrong Way, do this to mess with them, to throw a monkey wrench into normal. None of us are from Spanish Harlem, but Inglewood knows about police. And every block in the hundreds got old men who talk smack, and guns that fire cracker, and grandmothers who stir big pots, and the whole West Side is littered with nieces telling you to look past blue box streetlights, because regardless of where you are from there. I mean, you know there, but have never been asked to expert. So speak on it. Talk about it. All you gotta do is sit that ass down and write. It's that simple. Thanks. Thanks. Cool. Thanks, y'all. So I'm going to read the final poem in the book, and then DJ Cashier is going to come back, and Law and Stark and I and Cashier will all be in the building for a few. I think they're selling books in the right here. Yeah, right in there. Okay, in the oh, you got one already. Cool. I'll sign the books too if you wish. Great, thank you. I appreciate that. And Amy was right. So the book came out on Chicago's Incorporation Day, March 4th, 2017, at the Harold Washington Library. And over the last almost year, we've been doing. The plan was to do 180 readings in 365 days, one in every neighborhood in the city of Chicago. And we have exceeded the amount of readings, which I just found out yesterday, we're like at 220, which is a lot of readings. I'm just going to say that. But we are still missing a handful of neighborhoods. And so Tammy, who is in the back, who's right there. Hi, Tammy. How you doing? That's Tammy, y'all. You can say hello to Tammy. Tammy makes sure we get around at Young Chicago Authors to all the schools and communities. And so we're still looking for a handful of communities. And so if you think something like this, or a workshop or a combination of both might work in a community that you know of, please make sure you see Tammy afterwards, because we're in hundreds of schools over the course of the year, and we want to be, in all of them. That being said, I think the thing that I've learned this year is that the idea I had prior is right. The people who populate the city are the best in the world, and there's no question. And I've been listening a lot, and I've been asking a lot of questions, and I've been talking a lot, but I've also been hearing what it's like to be a Chicagoan in this moment. We're engaged in a process and a practice with StoryCorps and the Chicago Public Library Foundation to create, like Howard Zinn's educational project, the Voices of a People's History of Chicago archive on the 9th floor there. And it is our city, and it is our city to make and to make again. Studs in the beginning of Chicago talks about its Janus head, that you look one way and it is the most problematic city in the world, and it is also the most beautiful in the same moment. But if we want to claim its beauty, we also have to actively seek to repair the holes, the Grand Canyons of inequity that continue to make this city not what it should be. In part, this is what this poem is. Chicago has my heart. Don't ask me to leave. Don't force me to go. When the coasts call, or when the rents rise, when the city I know is unrecognizable, it's mine, not alone, and not to own. Chicago has my heart. At the lake, on the train, in the first days of spring that remind us why we live here at all, have bodies, can use them outside the cold restrictions of clothing, the confines of neighborhood. Chicago has my heart, the land I'm most confident. Give me an address, I'll get us there. I know the grid. Blocks got people in these streets. Students whose family run the breakfast spot on 79th near Haki, who is still here, building temples to Black lives and monuments to Mama Gwendolyn. My family is here. My father, 6 blocks from me in Albany Park. He is the mayor of the city's broke dreams. He holds them in his growing belly, his breaking heart, falling asleep in front of the television, chatting through the night in his taxi. The city with money now calls an Uber. He drives new residents to wherever they wish to go. Thank God for the hustle. Thank God for the hustler. My father, the kindest, most incompetent businessman here. He doesn't swindle or cheat. He is honest and fair. What a sucker the city makes of sweet men. Like me, I guess. I just want justice and someone to read poems to you. Chicago, my heart is all the people who make it, who are making it barely. In the 77 hoods, I hate the viaducts, the millionaires who urban plan them from the suburbs they resurrect downtown. Chicago, you have my heart, my whole history, my people you saved seeking refuge here, tucked in apartments in Ukrainian village in North Lawndale. You saved us from history while destroying others. My mother left, my brother moved, my friends gone, too much rent, debt, you killed some. Off. You are a ghost mound, I stalk still. Chicago, you have my heart split in two, like the city in stories you tell, but I am one, not two. I am one, second will not do. You can't continue to break us into in remade, refurbished, renewed models for the few. Chicago has my heart, but my head, my hands, my body with the people who build, who have a limit and can break, and tear it down and stop it from becoming what it's becoming. What is it becoming? Chicago has my heart, but the hearts of those who call this home, who root and champion the losers and villains who run this place, who put on for the shitty pizza in Arctic weather. We will turn our backs on the very land we are locked in, turn our backs on the capital wage slaves you've made us become. We will burn your memory in effigy and house dance in the afterglow. We rise, Chicago. This body politic will rise. Our fire will burn again. Thank you. Thank y'all. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks. That was very nice. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Was that your longest?
That was might have been my longest. Yeah, I know. I know. Amazing. Yeah. You timed it for me?
Yeah, I think it was like, yeah.
Yeah. Beat him out. Okay. All right. That was good. Cool. So first of all, another round for Huey Gang. Please make some noise for Stark and Law. Thank you, fellas. Another round for DJ Cashera as well. I'll say this, DJ Cashera is also not only the official DJ of Louder Than a Bomb and Young Chicago Authors, but also is a very prolific DJ in the city. And so if you feel like maybe, it's Thursday nights, Friday nights, Saturday night, I feel like I want to dance tonight, see what DJ Cashera is doing, you know what I mean? Also, if you have like an engagement, you know what I mean? Like a quinceañera, a bar bat mitzvah, a wedding that you're maybe planning, a homecoming perhaps, you know what I mean? DJ Cashera is available for such occasions, you know what I mean? She will definitely get that party popping. So make sure you holler at DJ Cashera. Tammy is in the back, and so if you do want to be in tune with what we're doing at Young Chicago Authors, and if you think something like this would make sense in your community, and Amy was right. We've been to, dive bars. Love dive bars, actually. Chicago, easily the greatest dive bars on the planet. Love dive bars. Also, we'll just have a drink in a dive bar. But if you want any kind of program, please see Tammy. Get a book in the gift shop, and please come out to Louder Than a Bomb. You will be inspired. You will see the city in a different way. I guarantee you. I've been doing it now for 18 years. Every time, every year, I see the city in a new way. I'm inspired when I leave. The best way to stay in tune with me is just through social media. We do a lot of programs, as you can tell, and they're various. We do music stuff. We do just gatherings in dive bars and other places. That's becoming a theme. And now, of course, we also do a lot of readings and educational things for writers of all ages. And so if you want more information about the work, it's just my name on social media. Twitter or Instagram is probably the best place. Thank you to Amy, thank you to Rena, thank you to the Treehouse Museum and all the staff here for entrusting us with this beautiful space. I look forward to more and more collaborations. And you guys, let's make this city better. We can do it, I believe it. So thank you so much.